Well, hello there. It's time we started a new Bible study, isn't it? Well, this is the winter Bible study at KUMC, and this is a video and Zoom conversation. So first we see the video, maybe do some reflection, and then we have a Zoom conversation Saturday at 9. You're all invited to it. Well, I've titled this study, They Say, You Say, I Say, as a way to consider how to rewrite our spiritual self-talk and how we think about ourselves. So they say is what people have said about us over the years, usually formed in childhood, and we've let that stay with us. The you say is God's conversation with us, how God sees us. And then I say is how, after being transformed by they say and God says, what do we say now? Who are we? And we can choose to be just one of those, or maybe a transformation from both of them. So we're going to look at the Word and the Holy Spirit through working through some Bible characters. And how did God transform these Bible characters? So we'll start today with a well-known guy from Genesis, and he's known as the Spoiled Brat. His brothers were so mad about his arrogance that they sold him into slavery and told his dad that he was dead. Do you know who I'm talking about? Joseph, of course. We even have a musical about him, don't we? Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Coat. I'd like to look first at Joseph from Joseph's perspective. Now we know that before he was born, his family had a complicated, often contentious relationship with one another. There were two moms and two maids who all had children by dad, Jacob. Joseph's mom was Rachel. And there were 10 boys and one girl before he was born. He was number 11th in the boys. And so this is what we know as being in a big family. And the youngest child in a big family can get lost. We know that. But not in this family, because Joseph was the heir apparent. Joseph was the child they expected to succeed and take over dad's inheritance. Well, usually it would be the firstborn, and that was Reuben. And Reuben was a very evil, even-tempered guy, but he was pretty much an adult by the time Joseph was born. So of all these children, Joseph has that burden of expectation of being the best. And dad treats him like that. His parents, Rachel and Jacob, kind of made him into the little prince of the family, and the brothers were jealous. So like the bullies on the schoolyard, the brothers were the one who told him he was a spoiled brat. And every time he tried to share his story or what dad did for him, they had no problem showing him that he wasn't as powerful as he thought he was. Then came the dreams. Joseph and his dreams. And what were these dreams? We're going to look here at my board, because that's the first question we have is, what were these dreams that Joseph had? And why did he share them with his brothers? Didn't he know that would get him into trouble? Well, we might want to call these dreams prophecy from God or messages from God. But the family didn't get that. And I want to turn first to this chapter 37, verses 9 through 11. And I'm going to read this out of the Message Bible because I think it's got some great translations of the verbs in here. The other passages we'll look at through the CEB Bible. But let's look at, what is happening here. Joseph had another dream and told this one also to his brothers. I dreamed another dream. The sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowed down to me. And then he told it to his father and his brothers again. And his fathers reprimanded him. What's with all the dreaming? Am I and your mother and your brothers supposed to bow down to you? Now his brothers were jealous, but his father brooded over the whole business. His father reprimanded, and his father brooded. Now, what kind of parenting do you see here? What kind of message does Joseph get? He gets reprimanded. And the brooding he may not understand. The brooding may be Jacob saying, oh, I remember when God talked to me in dreams. Of course, he still has a limp on it. He still walks with a limp from the dream that he had with the angel. Of course, Jacob understood dreams. But in front of the brothers, he was the spoiled brat. Now, the story goes on to show how in his young adult years, Joseph didn't live with the family. He was sold into slavery by his brothers. This cruelty, goes beyond understanding. But the slave traders took him to Egypt. They lived in Iraq on the East Euphrates River in Haran. And then he was taken to Egypt and sold to Potiphar, who was the chief officer for Pharaoh. Now, as the slave of the chief officer, you are asked to do anything. And Potiphar's wife wanted to be satisfied sexually and told Joseph to do that. Joseph refused. And because of his refusal, a story was made up and he was thrown into jail. Now, here comes along another two people in his jail who are from Pharaoh's officers, the chief wine steward and the chief baker. And the wine steward and the baker have dreams. So in this next part, we are looking at how Joseph has matured versus where he was before with his dreaming. And so we're going to look at the conversation between the wine steward and the baker with Joseph there in the jail. So when Joseph met them in the morning, he saw that they were upset. He asked the officers of Pharaoh who were under arrest with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so distressed today?" And they answered, "We both had dreams, but there's no one to interpret them." And Joseph says to them, Don't dream interpretations belong to God. Describe your dreams to me. Don't interpretations belong to God? Now, what's happening here? Can you see the change of perspective that Joseph has had since before he just blurted out these dreams? Now, as the story progresses, Joseph's interpretations were correct, but the officer who survived forgot all about his gifted friend in jail. That is, until Pharaoh had a dream and there was no one to interpret. So in the final leg of our story, Joseph has been awarded a position in the Pharaoh's administration. In fact, it's a very high position given to what he's been able to do for Pharaoh. And so at 30 years of age, he assumes control of all of the land of Egypt. And there's a great famine in the land, which Joseph predicted. But Egypt is actually the one with the storehouse of food now. So all the nations are coming to Egypt. In fact, all the nations are coming to Joseph. And we're looking at Joseph's power just rise and rise and rise. And so then the Hebrew family, his own family, comes to Joseph for food. Now this puts the final chapter on the they say, God says, I say story, because they say he's a spoiled brat. He doesn't deserve to get what he is getting. And the God says he has my gifts, lead us to say, okay, so who does Joseph say that he is? So the brothers come, and this is a long part of the story. You might want to read the whole thing. And Joseph doesn't reveal his identity. First, he sees his dreams played out, but he says nothing. And then he says, well, if there's a younger brother, I want to meet this younger brother, you bring him to me. They say no, he puts them in jail for 3 days. Then he lets them go, keeping Simeon behind so that they will come back. And he gives them the grain that they purchased and the money that they used to purchase the grain. They get all the way back to see Jacob. And Jacob is like, oh no, this can't happen. They eat all the grain, and when the grain is finally gone, they try to convince Jacob to let them have Benjamin. Now, Jacob is not going to let Benjamin go. He goes, this is my last child. If he dies, I'll be childish. The others are probably looking at them, but not even saying a word about their position in the family. So they guarantee that Benjamin will come home, and they go back to Egypt, very apologetic, very confessional. And they have a conversation with Joseph. And Joseph treats them very well and gives them a banquet and seats them all in their birth order. And the kids just can't believe that he knew their birth order. So it goes on. He's trying to give them pointers and also trying to test them. And finally, Joseph can have no more of this. He just has to tell them. So he says, we're going to look at Genesis 45, verses 4 through 8 here. And as we look at that, we see that Joseph is very excited to talk to his brothers. He says, come closer to me. And they move closer. And he says, I am your brother Joseph, and the one you sold to Egypt. Now don't be upset and don't be angry with yourselves that you sold me here. Actually, God sent me to save your lives. We've already had 2 years of famine in the land, and there are 5 years left without planting or harvesting. God sent me before you to make sure you'd survive and to rescue your lives in this amazing way. You didn't send me here. It was God who made me father of Pharaoh, master of his entire household, and ruler of the whole land of Egypt. Hurry, go back to your father. Tell him this is what your son Joseph said. God has made me master of Egypt. Come down to me, don't delay. How does Joseph see himself now? What is the self-talk that he's giving us? Now, we can talk about that in our Saturday Zoom meeting, but you think about that for a little bit. What does Joseph see of himself now? We all really want to be where Joseph is, which is on the side of God, living God's purposes for our life. And friends, I don't want to take any more of your time today. This is a great, wonderful story which deserves our conversation. So won't you join me on Zoom Saturday at 9 o'clock? If not this week, then plan for the next week. For next week, we have another amazing story, a story I call The Shy Orphan. Think about that for a minute and think about who it could be in the Bible. I'll give you some more hints when I send you the link to our Zoom. So God be with you until we meet again. Amen.